Imagine working tirelessly at your job, pouring your heart and soul into every task, only to have your hard work go unnoticed or worse, unfairly punished. That's exactly what happened to one worker who thought she was on the verge of a well-deserved promotion. Instead, her biased manager blindsided her with a demotion, all because of personal prejudice rather than performance. She was devastated but not defeated. With her career seemingly spiraling, she had a choice: give up or push forward. Little did her manager know, his decision would set off a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. Weeks later, the tables turned in the most unexpected way. That same worker found herself not just back on top, but in a position that would leave her former manager stunned. Want to know how she went from being underestimated to calling the shots? Stick around, it's a story of resilience, karma, and sweet, sweet revenge. It all began on a rainy Monday morning, the kind of day that felt heavy with unspoken tension. She had arrived early as usual, armed with her coffee and a determination to start the week strong. Her track record spoke for itself: projects delivered ahead of schedule, glowing reviews from clients, and a work ethic that inspired her peers. She thought today might finally be the day her efforts would be acknowledged. Her manager, however, had other plans. He called her into his office, his expression unreadable. She sat down, clutching her notebook, half expecting a discussion about her potential promotion. But as the conversation unfolded, her heart sank. He claimed her performance had been inconsistent, that her attitude wasn't a fit for the team's culture. Words like restructure and realignment were thrown around, masking the real issue: his personal bias. She was being demoted. The shock was like a punch to the gut. She knew her work had been impeccable. She also knew this wasn't the first time her manager had targeted her. Whispers in the office had long suggested he played favorites, promoting those who catered to his ego and sidelining anyone who didn't. This time, she was his scapegoat. Her co-workers exchanged uneasy glances when the news spread. Some were sympathetic, offering quiet words of support. Others avoided her, wary of getting on the manager's bad side. The office, once a place where she felt confident and capable, now felt like a battlefield. But she wasn't one to crumble under pressure. She spent that evening replaying the conversation in her mind, feeling a mix of anger and determination. If her manager thought he could diminish her, he was wrong. She decided she wouldn't just survive this setback, she'd rise above it. Over the next few weeks, she threw herself into her work, refusing to let her new role define her worth. She stayed late, took on extra responsibilities, and even stepped in to help colleagues with their projects. Despite the demotion, she made herself indispensable. Meanwhile, her manager seemed oblivious to the cracks forming in his own facade. Behind closed doors, upper management had begun noticing discrepancies in his leadership. His team's performance had started slipping, and his biased decisions were becoming harder to ignore. It wasn't just her demotion, other workers had also voiced concerns about his unfair treatment and lack of account. Unbeknownst to her, a pivotal meeting was taking place in the executive boardroom. A senior director had caught wind of the situation and decided to conduct a quiet review of the manager's actions. Emails were pulled, performance reports were analyzed, and interviews were conducted discreetly. One evening, she overheard snippets of a hushed conversation between two colleagues near the break room. "They're looking into him," one whispered. "Apparently, some higher-ups aren't happy with how he's running things." Her heart raced. Was this karma finally catching up to him? At the same time, another subplot was brewing. One of her teammates, someone she'd mentored early in their career, approached her with an opportunity. A high-profile project had come up, and despite her demotion, they insisted she was the only one qualified to lead it. It was a risky move. Taking on such a visible task could either prove her worth or make her an even bigger target for criticism. But she accepted without hesitation. As she worked on the project, she couldn't ignore the mounting tension in the office. Her manager seemed more irritable than ever, snapping at employees and micromanaging every little detail. It was clear he felt the pressure, though he wouldn't admit it. The project became her refuge. She poured everything into it, staying up late to perfect presentations and running through every scenario to ensure nothing could go wrong. Slowly but surely, she began to feel like herself again, confident, capable, and in control. Then came the day of the project's presentation. The room was filled with executives, her manager sitting at the head of the table, looking smug as if he were taking credit for her work. She ignored him and focused on delivering her pitch with precision and poise. By the time she finished, the room erupted in applause. Executives praised her insight and creativity, some even suggesting her approach could become a model for future initiatives. Her manager's forced smile barely concealed his frustration. As she gathered her materials and left the room, she couldn't help but notice the senior director lingering behind, speaking in low tones to her manager. The look on his face was enough to tell her that things were far from over. Back at her desk, she allowed herself a small smile. For the first time in weeks, she felt like the tide was turning. But the question lingered: would it be enough to finally topple her manager's reign? Or would he find a way to maintain his grip on power, dragging her down with him? One thing was certain: the story wasn't over yet. The stakes were higher than ever, and the next move could change everything. The tension in the office was palpable in the days following the presentation. Her manager avoided direct eye contact with her, and his usual air of superiority seemed to falter. Meanwhile, whispers of her success rippled through the company, sparking conversations about her leadership potential. The senior director's subtle but noticeable interest in her work only fueled the speculation. One afternoon, she was called into the director's office. The walk down the long corridor felt like an eternity, her mind racing with possibilities. As she stepped inside, the director greeted her with a warm smile and gestured for her to sit. They spoke at length about her recent project, her approach to problem solving, and her overall vision for the company's future. The conversation felt less like an interrogation and more like a genuine exchange of ideas. Then, the director leaned forward and said something that took her breath away. "We've been watching your progress for a while now. Your work speaks volumes, and your ability to lead under pressure is exactly what this company needs. How would you feel about taking on a more significant role here?" Her heart skipped a beat. Was this really happening? She managed to compose herself and respond with a confident yet humble acceptance, but inside, she was buzzing with excitement. The director assured her that the details would be finalized soon and that this promotion was just the beginning of her journey within the organization. As she walked back to her desk, her mind was flooded with emotions. She had been demoted just weeks ago, written off by a manager who saw her as a threat rather than an asset. Now, she was being offered a chance to step into a position of real influence. It was proof that hard work and resilience could defy even the most unfair circumstances. But the story wasn't quite over. The fallout from her manager's behavior was still unfolding. The senior director had been conducting a thorough investigation behind the scenes, and the findings weren't pretty. Evidence of favoritism, mismanagement, and even unethical practices came to light. It turned out that several employees had been unfairly treated under his leadership, and the higher-ups were no longer willing to look the other way. One morning, as she settled into her routine, the news broke. Her manager was being let go, effective immediately. The announcement sent shockwaves through the office, but for her, it brought a sense of closure. His departure wasn't just about personal vindication, it was a step toward creating a healthier, fairer work environment for everyone. In the days that followed, she was officially promoted to a role that made her his successor. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same manager who had once tried to push her down was now out of the picture, and she was stepping into his shoes not to follow in his footsteps, but to redefine what leadership meant in the company. Her first order of business was clear: she needed to rebuild trust within the team. She held a meeting with her colleagues, openly addressing the challenges they had faced and outlining her vision for a more collaborative and supportive workplace. It wasn't an easy conversation. There were wounds that needed healing, but her authenticity and willingness to listen made an immediate impact. She also reached out to those who had been sidelined under her former manager's regime, ensuring they felt valued and empowered. Slowly but surely, the team began to thrive. Productivity soared, morale improved, and the once toxic atmosphere transformed into one of camaraderie and mutual respect. As for her, the experience left her with valuable lessons. She learned that resilience wasn't just about surviving adversity but about using it as a stepping stone to something greater. She discovered the power of integrity and the importance of standing up for what's right, even when the odds seemed stacked against her. And she realized that true leadership isn't about wielding power, it's about empowering others. Her journey became a source of inspiration for many within the company and beyond. People admired her ability to rise above challenges and remain steadfast in her principles. She even began mentoring younger employees, sharing her story and encouraging them to believe in their potential, no matter what obstacles they faced. Years later, she would look back on those tumultuous weeks with a mix of pride and gratitude. What had started as a seemingly insurmountable setback had turned into an opportunity for growth and transformation. The biased manager who had tried to diminish her had unknowingly paved the way for her greatest triumph. In the end, her story wasn't just about a workplace conflict or a personal victory, it was a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of integrity, and the belief that justice, though sometimes delayed, always finds its way. And as she stood at the helm of a thriving team, she knew that the best way to honor her journey was to continue building a legacy of fairness, respect, and excellence.